on this computer. Okay, welcome. I'm Joel, and Tim is on his way here. We're just dealing with some technical issues where we're going to be talking about 2022 by the numbers, which means it's the time of year where we have visibility to a whole bunch of companies and the numbers and the profitability, the staffing, the hiring, the firing, the different verticals that people are working in. And we're starting to aggregate some of that data and looking for patterns and trends. And I know, like back when I ran my studio, this was the kind of information, man, I wish I had access to that kind of stuff. So we're hoping to share this information with all of you to give you a sense of like, hey, I am in my own little bubble, but what's happening in the larger industry? Are my numbers kind of like everybody else's, or am I doing better? Am I doing worse? And then we also want to hopefully draw some insights called, hey, for the companies that are winning, that are doing something right or succeeding where others are not, what's going on there? What can we glean from that? And I see Jason in the house. What's up, Jason? Do you know if Tim's on his way back?
Good afternoon, Mr. Pilger.
All right, I see. I'm waiting on Tim to come back because he's got the data. So I'm glad to have you here, so I'm not all alone, but let me see if Tim is back yet. What's the meeting ID? Got it. Let me let him in. Here we go. See, Tim's in Paris, so, you know, he's he has an excuse.
He's bouncing around.
Yeah, why he's not prepared. See, I'm in New York. You're in Southern Oregon, right, Jason? So we got the planet surrounded.
We're at our base station. We didn't just finish a week in Austria and now are trying to celebrate our anniversary in Paris. So,
well, thank you, Tim.
But good for him.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Tim, for sacrificing some of your personal vacation time to show up and show us the data. Okay, I sent him the link, so he should be dropping in any moment, and we'll take a look at what we have to share. In the meantime, we get to basically, I'm going to say hi to everybody that's here, because you know what? By the way, if you're new to the briefing, please let us know. For all of you familiar faces, it's good to have you back. Tim, there he is. Welcome, sir. No stress. Okay.
There we go.
All right, you feeling a little bit better?
Dude, I don't know what happened.
Well, welcome back. I basically gave everyone the context of this is that time of year when we start to aggregate the data and we anonymize it and start looking for patterns, ultimately aiming for, hey, are there, first of all, some norms that we can share with people that give them a sense of how am I doing, right, compared to other studios, other production companies. But then the more juicy question is, hey, what are some of the insights that we can glean from the companies that are winning, right? That are maybe succeeding in certain ways that others are not. So that's sort of the dream. So Tim, I know you and I just got this data like hot off the presses from our team. Where do you want to start?
Let's talk about why we're doing this. Like, what's the purpose of looking at numbers and wins and losses? Because our overall goal at this time of year is to say, hey, you have 12 months worth of data, kind of a complete set, especially if you did projections like we almost a year ago, we told people, hey, let's program the year. Let's look at 2022 coming up. What do you want the year to look like? And now you're at the end of that. And now we can have a retrospective of looking back. So really and when we're doing this, there are wins and losses. And those wins and losses allow us to kind of think differently and make different decisions. So let's talk about wins, Joel. Why do we care about wins? What does wins do to us?
Well, look, I think you said a big word back there that I want to really peg for a second. You said program. Like, that's a weird word for most people when you say program the year. But I love the thought behind it, because if I was going to say, what is a win for me? A win is when things go according to plan. I mean, if only for starters, if I create a plan called, hey, I want to still be in business at the end of the year, that's a pretty big goal. And if things go according to plan, you program, here's what it looks like to stay in business, and I execute on that. To me, that's winning, just for starters.
Yeah, exactly. What I think is interesting about wins is that it often makes us give it like a feel good feeling to it, right? So we're saying, hey, wins, I like wins, let's do more wins. But also that could be kind of like it can kind of bite you, can it, Joel? Like once you can kind of sink yourself into a certain area of only one small group of projects or clients or opportunities, and kind of miss a bigger picture if you're only focusing on the wins.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you some examples, right? Like for me, when I was in that business owner role, a win was almost always like a really cool project, or especially a new client. That was always like win. But if I fast forward and look at today's environment, I would say, you know what? Capturing a really great talent and bringing on, say, like a new creative director or something is probably even a bigger win in today's environment. So those are just some examples I'm thinking of.
So then also the true with like losses, isn't it? So if the losses really kind of like they make you feel bad, maybe that's
Right.
an easy way of thinking about it. There are things you want to avoid, and there's things to learn from those losses. Hey, my expectations, for example, my expectations for the year was I was going to hit $2 million. Instead, I'm at $1.5 million. I want to ask myself a question. Why didn't I get there? What did I understand the year to be like, and my responsibility, and where did I go short on my expectations or my job and my responsibilities to get there?
Yeah, the losses always are, let's just say they're rarely planned, right? Like we don't plan on losing. So a loss is always some sort of I didn't program it that way. That being said, we can program that. We can program a thing called, hey, what if this year we actually see a decline? And what are the decision points? And let's go ahead and program that so that if that unfolds, we're not really being caught off guard. We've kind of made those decisions in advance. And I know you're a big fan of that, especially when we turn over from year to year to like look forward and say, sure, what if next year we win a lot? What if we stay the same? But what if we lose?
Yeah. And I always want to like just put in perspective that what we often try to, as entrepreneurs, try to control things too much, don't we?
Mhm.
We want to imagine that we have, it probably just gets us out of that feeling of the lack of control we really have over our business, if we are honest.
Mhm.
So we want to have this sense of, oh, I know what I'm doing. Therefore, I can set a goal or have a really clear objective I want to accomplish. And if I accomplish it, I feel like I am a business leader. I am doing well. All is good. And if I don't accomplish that, I think to myself, well, really, should I be doing this? Am I great at business? But if we were to be honest, and what we really know is business is not only winning or only losing or avoiding all losses. Business ownership is dealing with the punches, however they might come.
Yeah.
So understanding the wins but not sink in too far so that you're only looking for that as you move forward, and understanding the losses so that you can learn from those, grow from those, or even accept them. Some of the losses that we're going to see are changes in the economy that are going to be true no matter how much effort you put into it. How do we accept them and pivot within those parameters?
Yeah, because we do know this, right? The economy is shifting, and I keep forgetting the way that you've said it, but it's like a really strong creative firm up against a bad economy. The bad economy always wins. So
You almost have it right.
Okay.
A strong business versus a strong business versus a weak economy. The economy always wins. Yeah.
So that's just for us, that the encouragement there is, let's just be sensitive to that and know that maybe in a down year, could we maybe even change the word from wins and losses to, I don't know, there's a different word, Tim. Like, I don't know that I lost. I adapted, right? We've seen companies have great years for the past 2 years through the pandemic and everything. Most of them had record years. And I know that there are studios that we've been behind the scenes where they're like, oh, we went from 3 million to 4 million to 5 million. And we would say to them, yeah, but you've always been a $3 million company. You just had a $4 or a $5 or a $6 million year. That's really hard for the entrepreneur to wrap their head around because they so want it to be true that I'm winning and I'm bigger and I'm growing. And that's like a common, maybe more Western or American narrative that I would say we encourage people to reconsider.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's jump into some of these numbers because I think they're really curious, and I want
Okay.
people to kind of look at how the industry did this year so that they can plan for next year the same way.
See, I'm curious too. I haven't even looked at any of this, so I'm coming in totally cold, and you are just about to.
All right, here's our numbers. This is what we're looking at here.
Okay.
So let me explain how we got here. So at the beginning of the year, what we do is a factors report with our clients. When we're doing the factors report, we want to sit down with them and understand what their goals are for the year, revenue, and then we divide that revenue into direct and indirect expenses. So overall, we're looking at projected revenue and then actual revenue now. So over the three verticals, we're talking about motion graphics companies. In this case, it's motion graphics are people that are working in promos, commercials, design, aesthetics. This might include environmental projects as well, but primarily not visual effects companies. Visual effects are very kind of different margins, different parameters for a company. And this last one, agency, is a mixture of companies that are just doing strategy-based work plus execution, or they might have live action and motion design, live action and post elements to it. So this is a bigger picture. You'll see that with our motion graphics companies, the revenue goal and their actual revenue are pretty close to one another. So what we expected to hit for the year and what we're actually able to hit for the year, we did very well. The companies that are working in the visual effects space, they did better than expected. But those companies that are agencies that we work with, their revenue goals and their actuals really totally hit the mark here. They went beyond what is expected. So what's interesting to me is this feels like, hey, we kind of know our clients and know what the deliverables are going to be. In visual effects, this is one or two wins that get there. But overall, our group is either hitting par or doing better than expected from January 2022, when we first did our factors report, or late December to where they are now. So congratulations to our team that's doing it. I know a big part of this, I'll say, is if I did this on a line graph, there'd be months that we totally hit and other months where we were totally struggling, absolutely struggling, especially the beginning of end of the third quarter, beginning of fourth quarter, really, really hard hit when it came to the agency and motion graphic space.
Yeah.
So we know there are down cycles and up cycles, but this should give everyone a lot of confidence that there are things that you can project and understand. And when you play conservative, you can actually could do better. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, I find it really interesting, Tim, because like anecdotally, I would have said, sure, the studios out there that are doing a lot of brand direct stuff tend to be winning in interesting ways. But to see it here where they're more agency, there's more like, yes, we do strategy. We also maybe treat some of our clients like accounts. I don't want to get too into the weeds of that because I know there's a lot of nuance there, and we're not saying, hey, these are like ad agencies in the making. It's really more of a different approach to the way that you engage. But the fact that they greatly exceeded the expectation is really interesting. It's like, oh, it's not just anecdotes in my brain. There's truly a pattern there.
Yeah, and this is looking over multiple agencies that I know that I'm working with. I'll say that the worst case scenario I've seen are people that hit par. And then I know the ones that I worked with that gained above that they're looking at one or two big clients that they weren't expecting. And what's great about agency work is these are repeat clients. So they're not just project by project, but you actually kind of land a client and then you're working with them for a longer period of time. And I think that retained client helped them gain a base. I'll be curious how this plays out in 2023. I don't know if I'm totally seeing it this way now with all the cutbacks, but for the year, it's been really, really great.
Right. I have a similar, suspicion that I don't think that year over year growth is going to be, I'd be surprised if it was that good next year. Real surprised. Even next quarter.
This is a major contributor to profit, this next one. So direct expenses are the expenses that are directly attached to doing the project. It's often the expenses that your producers are controlling. And when you're looking at this from a industry to industry or segment to segment of our industry point of view, look in the motion graphics realm, right? Motion graphics had the opportunity to be a lot more profitable. What they expected to spend on direct costs and what they actually spend is about 50%.
Wow.
What this shows, yeah. And I actually know some of the companies and what they did specifically, but when the going got tough, let's say, they really just leaned on their producers and had their producers help them walk through the elements that are there and deliver with the team that they had in place. So heavy use of staff here is really, really great. Pivoting to freelancers when they needed to, but I'll say like the term utilization is probably a term I use more in 2022 than I've ever used in my life. Visual effects right on par. Not surprised at this. Visual effects is so programmatic in a shot by shot basis. The breakdown of the projects are in such detail, and you're almost programmatically, every 3 days delivering something in these projects. So I'm expecting that to always be on par. And the agency side is completely reverse than the motion graphics side. So although their revenue goals were higher, what you're going to notice here is that their direct costs were also higher. So their profit expectation is the same, even though their revenue is higher. There is a correlation in agencies that we can't see here, which is the pass-through element. So what we're attributing is revenue, and what we're attributing direct costs can actually be a pass-through. So in one case, I know they had a really big contract, and a couple $1 million to that contract were asked to basically be passed through from one group to the other. So that is an element of agency as well.
Well, one thing I'd noticed too is I think of VFX generally is the most commoditized of these three, call it offerings, right? It's really the one that's very difficult to command a significant premium over any competitor because the objective is somewhat clear and defined. There's not nearly as much subjectivity in the deliverables as there is in motion and in agency work.
Yeah, in this case too, you can see where maybe even costs increase throughout the year, and you're locked into these shots and the shot by shot cost because they took a little bit of a hit. Here, you're looking at, these are companies, I can say, 100% of these companies are using our roll-up. So 100% of this is under direct control of producers, and they're projecting out the costs, understanding and kind of working within the parameters. And most of these producers understand how to make a profit, so they're controlling those profits too. So a lot of reward for those groups right there. We'll just do the same thing. This is the indirect costs. So these are costs that are indirectly related to a project, overhead costs, owners, basis, and so on. The only one that really won in the indirect category here is the motion graphics group again. And this was their projected piece. What's funny about motion graphics is when we working with motion graphics firms, the margin, or we'll say projected profit at the end of the year, is often so small. Like motion graphics companies, I don't know what it is, they feel like I'm always taking from them. So they want me to say that there's no profit or only 5% profit, 10% max, right? But then when we finish the year and there's 20% profit, they feel so good about that. They're like, wow, I made profit. But then I say, well, let's do 2023. Okay, yeah, but we got to leave it on the screen. It's all about the art, right? So it's interesting how there's an internal desire to say we're mostly about our work. We don't want to be known as a profit, factory only. But when it comes down to making decisions on a project by project basis, you can clearly do it.
I like the conservative attitude, right? Of like, I'm going to produce really great work, which is another way of saying I'm going to give all the money back to the clients. But as it plays out, there's all these decisions that get to be made that you can win maybe in unexpected ways. And then over the course of an entire year, wow, look at the delta.
And then agency is almost the opposite. Agencies know that they're basically a value-based proposition. They almost never deliver a breakdown of elements and the commodities on the project. They say, oh, we're going to help you gain 5 million views on this spot. That's going to cost you $500,000. And then the brand says, okay, here's $500,000, do the work. So they're expecting large margins or the opportunity for margins. It's often the direct expenses for this are such a small piece, 20, 30% of the overall project, that the money the client gives you. And the indirect costs are usually under control. So here, I think what we're looking at, if you look at heavy revenue, remember this first thing here, lots of revenue. What we're looking at here in the indirect is growth. I know agencies that got back into their space or rented and leased a new space. So that there's a higher than expected when we're looking at the beginning of 2022, or they hired creative directors, they hired new strategy teams. There's a lot of growth in there, and that would be above, what you expected at the beginning of the year to what the opportunity really was with the revenue that's coming in. So this actually is not, it can look bad if you're looking at it one way. What I know is these are investment dollars over what we expected to go there, but they have margin built into it. So here's your margin pieces that are right here. So the margin for motion graphics, again, was, expecting it to be somewhat great. Oh, it's interesting here what the margin call is here. So we're looking at something that really says, hey, this is surprising me a little bit. I'm going to say the margin here is something that is not exactly what I feel like my experience is here. So as the numbers are coming in, it's very different. But here we're looking at a margin that basically is half of what the client has. I'm going to say what I know here is that right now at this point of the year, there are things that aren't showing up in the margin that because it's other distributions that are taking place at the end of the year. So going through the tax planning and what have you. But I know for sure that these people this motion graphics group profited greater than we originally expected them at the beginning of the year. Visual effects, again, you can kind of see it here. Visual effects are always just running a tight margin. So they did it actually a little bit better than they expected year over year, but they're kind of always expect something small because it's really a volume game. And agencies, they're trying to control those pieces and parts that they have, but their actual is a little bit less. Again, I think this is kind of interesting because what I know is that when we're playing with the margins at the beginning of the year, there are elements that are there. So I might look into these numbers more. Not quite my experience, but interesting when I see the numbers play.
Yeah, I'm suspicious.
Yeah.
Might be some anomalies.
Tax planning changes all this stuff.
Yeah.
And because we're looking at something, a month after I've done tax planning with most of my clients, and Jason's done that with his clients, and you have too, Joel. So there's those tax planning elements can start affecting these numbers. I'm wondering, is this accrual versus cash basis and all that kind of gobbledygook? Yeah, sure. So those are the verticals. What I want to kind of go back to though is so what does this mean if I was looking at 2023? Because what we want people to do is actually do these projections. What's great is if you do a projection at the beginning of the year, that becomes your yardstick, your ruler to say, on a quarter by quarter basis of what did I expect and where am I really? I just had a conversation with a client that wanted to bring on 2 new staff members. And it's a great move. The whole team likes these freelancers. They're going to become staff. It means it's something great for the team, have internal capabilities that they have to currently freelance to. But the first place we went was their factors report to say, if we bring these 2 freelancers onto staff, who are you not going to use as freelancers? So what's your utilization of freelancers if they're going to come on board? Because if you're going to add to your staff, you're going to have to not outsource that work anymore to someone else. How do we see it? How do we look at that? Well, we just created basically a measuring stick for that. Then we said, okay, let's say if last year we were doing 20% of our overall revenue was going to freelancers, or about a small portion of the direct costs going to freelancers. This year we have to shrink down that freelancer direct costs into a different category. Hey, maybe on the roll up, we should put that goal on a project by project basis then. So if we're going to outsource 17% to freelancers on a project by project basis. I want to measure those freelancers on a project by project basis now and see how often I hit 17% so that I can make sure I'm affording those to new staff members.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see that, because when I think about a roll up as a list of projects and all those key pieces of data that help you make decisions as you go through production, is that almost like a tachometer, right? Like, oh, we have this many freelancers on this job, right? We have 10% of the money going to freelance. Great. 20%. We're at red line or something like that.
Yeah, and there's got to be something that says the decisions I make at the beginning of the year, I want to see if I can follow through with that commitment, because I want to create expectations,
right?
And I want to hit those goals or do better so that I can achieve what I expected to in my business. If I want to grow, I have to invest back in my business to see how it grows. Or if I have invested in my business, I want to see my return on investment with the team I have put in place. If it's not measuring up to my expectations, I have to accept that and pivot and do something different. So that we might call something like that a loss, or, a loss of not what I expected, but it's learning and being truthful with yourself that you can actually then make the decisions and grow your business like you want to. That's the strategic element to making good business decisions.
So I know we've got like 2 minutes before we have to kick ourselves off of here and let people get back to work. Let's give people a sense of, because we talked about spending these weeks leading up to Christmas as kind of going through a series. So what's like, we're seeing a peek at now some of the numbers. What are we going to actually do with this as we get into next week and the following?
Yeah, so the next couple of weeks, what we want to do is give people the opportunity to kind of reflect on what this year was like and what they're going to do differently in 2023. We're going to look back next week at the topics for the weekly briefings over the last 12 months and kind of put those together. I know it's kind of fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
Think through what are the big elements that people have been talking about this year? What are the things that seem to repeat themselves over and over again? I know number one is always sales. I know for sure it's sales because it comes up so often. Yep. We almost have to skip it as often as it comes up. But we want to be able to look at the pattern for 2022 and recognize the opportunities to do something different in 2023, or again, accept the truth. If this is what it's going to be like, how do we live within those parameters and still succeed?
Yeah, interesting. And so I think too, something we can mention as we go beyond Christmas is it's that time of year where in the community, we're going to do some sort of goal setting exercise. So there's this idea of, what did last year mean? What do we want next year to mean? And then how do we translate that into goals, which might be vague or not easy to measure. But then the idea is, how do we convert some of those goals and actually put them into our factors report? So like you said, we program the year. What do we want the year to look like? And we program it. And then we say, okay, now here are all the little micro decisions that will add up to all those big results that we want to see happen.
Yeah, and once you have that program, like a revenue goal, you can put a bingo card in place. You can do the sales keeping effort, the sales keeping process that you were talking about through Confab, so that you can hit those revenue projections. You can put a roll-up in place and put your weekly production meeting in place, so you're hitting those direct and indirect numbers. And then you can work with your cash flow to make sure you're controlling your overall growth strategy for the team. So you can actually control your future, regardless if revenue is up or down, you can still make profit. Regardless if your expenses go up, you can still meet those parameters and you can negotiate something different with your client, and you can have the opportunity to develop skills that you're always winning and always being proactive with your clients so that you're moving your company forward while moving their project forward and delivering. That's how we control and run our business.
And then why do we do that? I'm going to add a meta to that, because at the end of the day, I want to know as a business owner, am I producing our best work and staying in business? Right? Because a lot of times I make all this great work and I drive myself out of business. So how do we do both of those things?
Yeah, exactly. We got to win everywhere, right? This is how we thrive in our business and in our life and our career. We have to be able to understand the decisions and make those decisions and control them. So,
all right. Well, we're 1 minute over, so we're fired.
Well, thanks everyone for your patience as we had to reboot everything to keep it going here today. It's a crazy moment.
Yeah,
right
so-
before we started.
So maybe we'll even look at some more numbers next week, Tim, I'm guessing. And for everyone that was here, please come back next week. Invite a friend. And if you're a member of our community, by all means, keep the conversation going there, because there's a few hundred owners that are talking about everything it takes to run a business. And if you're not a member, of course, reach out to us. Go to, community.revthink.com, and you can join there if you're qualified. And Tim, I will see you next week. I'm almost sad to say it, because are you still going to be in Paris? I don't want to steal your vacation.
No, I'm not in Paris next week. Sorry.
Okay.
I will be in LA actually. So
Okay.
I'll be somewhere.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of the community. And we will see you all next week. So
See you
long.
next week.
Okay,
Later.
bye.